Good evening.
So I'm actually going to start exactly where Dr. Richardson left off on expectations. So I think this has been mentioned a little bit tonight about why we are talking about thriving in the midst of everything that's going on for our youth throughout this country, throughout our communities in Chicago. Why are we talking about thriving when there's so much violence going on? And I think one of the main answers to that question is that it's really essential for us to have positive expectations for our youth. It's important for us to talk about the violence. It's important for us to talk about how to stop it. And if the message to our youth is just don't get killed, just don't drop out of high school, just don't kill anyone, we're missing a big part of the picture. Right? So we really need to have positive expectations. We really need to show our youth not only what we don't want them to do, but what we want them to do. And expectations are powerful. So just as Dr. Richardson said, when we set our expectations high, our youth will live up to them. So what are the characteristics of a thriving adolescent? I am going to talk about 6 characteristics that have been found in the literature and have been found to apply to a range of youth, and in my own research I've found them to apply to African American youth as well. So the first characteristic of thriving is when a youth has and is pursuing a passion or interest. Adolescence is really an important time for youth to be exploring their interests, to figure out what they want to do, what drives them, what motivates them. So for me, as an adolescent, that meant dancing. So I joined my high school's dance conservatory, and I was there 3 to 4 hours a day, 3 to 4 times a week, and that was what got me going. If you have an adolescent who likes arguing, as Reggie mentioned, you might get them to join the debate team, put their arguing skills to good use, right? So helping youth to figure out what they want to do and using their energy in a positive way. A second example or second characteristic of thriving is having a positive attitude and optimistic outlook on life. So this doesn't mean always being happy. It's very normal and healthy to have a range of emotions. We never expect everyone to be happy all the time. And when youth are able to be upbeat and positive and look toward the future with a positive outlook, that's a characteristic of thriving. Reggie mentioned hopelessness, and I think that that's something that a lot of our youth deal with, right? So when you don't think you're going to live, Dr. Smith mentioned this, when you don't think you're going to live past age 17, you have an issue of hopelessness. So what's the point of trying? What's the point of trying in school? What's the point of being involved? What's the point of pursuing anything if you feel that you're gonna die soon, right? So it's really important to help youth develop a positive outlook. A third characteristic of thriving is a desire to make a difference in the world and the belief that a youth will be successful in this. So not only wanting to just get a job and have a career, but really wanting to make an impact on the world and really wanting to use your gifts and talents to contribute to the world. A fourth characteristic of thriving is having the belief that youth have the responsibility to help others, right? So it's not just about me getting mine. It's not just about kind of the American ideal of individualism and pull myself up by my bootstraps and it's all about me. It's also about what you're contributing, what you're giving back. We all know the scripture, Luke 12:48, that says, "To whom much is given, much is required." And it's really important that we pass that on to our adolescents. A fifth characteristic of thriving is being open to challenges and experiencing new things. I think that this is a tough one for some of our youth. In working with some adolescents, I've had the experience of people giving up very easily. As soon as something's hard, as soon as, the math class is too hard or the English teacher challenges you, you say, I'm done, right? And that's a problem because we all know that the only way to be successful in this life is to be able to face challenges head on, move through them, move past them. So it's essential that we help our youth cultivate a sense of discipline and strength and the ability to overcome challenges. And part of the way that we do that is by telling stories, right? Telling the stories of the challenges that you experienced when you were growing up. helping to share with our youth about how you persevered. I think we often hear from generations that are a few decades older than me, that these youth don't know what happened, right? These youth don't know how we struggled. The youth don't know how we fought for the rights that we have today. And my question is often, well, who's going to tell them, right? Adolescents don't magically kind of have this knowledge. We know the schools are not teaching them. So it's our responsibility to pass on the knowledge of the struggles of our ancestors and our forefathers and foremothers and show them that we are people who persevere in the midst of challenge and struggle and that they can do so too. Relatedly, helping youth to be open to new experiences, right? So Chicago is a really diverse city, and it's also a very segregated city. So you could help an adolescent have a new experience just by taking an L ride to a different part of town. And that helps to open adolescents' eyes to see beyond their small part of the world and part of the city to experience new things. And, you know, as was spoken about before, the modeling, that also means that as adults, we have to be open to new experiences, to trying new foods, to going new places. A sixth characteristic of thriving, and the last characteristic of thriving that I'm going to talk about, is something I think most of you will probably agree with because we're in a church, and that is that when adolescents have a relationship with God and a sense of the importance of spirituality and connection with a higher power and how that impacts their life, that is a reflection of their thriving. And if you're not particularly religious, this still applies, right? Having a sense of spirituality and a connection to the world around you and higher power is a really important aspect. And I think many of us have seen this in our own lives. When you're struggling, you often want something or someone to turn to. When you know you can't make it by yourself, having somebody else to turn to or a higher power to turn to get you through that challenging experience is essential and helps you to keep pushing through. So you may be thinking, well, these things sound great, but how do we get youth to have these characteristics? And that is a question that I tried to answer with my dissertation research. For my dissertation study, I had youth at 5 Black churches on the south side of Chicago answer survey questions about their life and experiences, and I was really looking at things in their lives that were associated with thriving. And I found that 3 main things were related to thriving for the youth in my study, who were all African American. The first thing was being involved in church, right? So we all kind of have a sense of the fact that it's good to get people involved in church. And my research confirmed this. There's lots of research out there that shows that having adolescents involved in church is a positive thing. It's positive because of the social support that they receive, because of the values that they learn and grasp onto. And it's also important because of what I just mentioned, developing a relationship with God or a higher power. The second thing is when adolescents receive support within a religious context, this is also something that's related to thriving. And so this means receiving support from church leaders, church members, and perceiving support from God. So not only is it important to have youth show up to church, it's also really important to provide programming and opportunities for youth to receive support. So that could be a mentoring program, it could be a rites of passage program, just an opportunity for youth to connect with adults who may not be part of their family. They're part of the church family, but maybe not part of their parents, part of their parental unit. And as Dr. Richardson mentioned, adolescence is a time when youth are pushing away from their parents, right? Your parent may say one thing and you roll your eyes and ignore them, but the church member who's your mentor may say the same thing. You might be like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I should get involved in the debate team. So it's important to have other adults who are, nurturing and mentoring the adolescents in your lives, because we need kind of a wraparound system. The other thing I think that's important is that it's not only important for youth to show up to church, but it's also helpful and really important to help them start to develop their own relationship with God, right? So I think oftentimes adolescents come to church and they kind of sit and maybe they sort of listen, maybe they sort of don't, but they may not be truly developing a relationship. And I think supporting youth to do this is really important, and framing God as a supportive figure in their life is going to help them to thrive. The